It's a race to the finish. With less than 100 days to the general election, we have a primary around the corner. Several Southwest Florida races will be decided. If you're still making up your mind, this may help. We're calling this episode of Behind the Headlines, Politics Unfiltered. And we begin with Up for Grabs. U.S. Congressional District 19 is turning over again. The Republican candidates approach from different directions, but they're all eyeing Washington. Then, two seasoned Republicans are battling it out. Both currently state representatives each want the same Senate seat. Their primary race is bringing about divided loyalties. Plus, with no political opponent, another state rep is unchallenged. She talks about the issues she foresees waiting for the new legislature. I'm Amy Osher. We'll also have the latest scoops and stories from our newsroom and dual commentaries from the Daily News and the News Press. That's coming up. I'm Amy Osher. Thanks for joining us. A pivot in political speak means a change of course. That's what we're doing in this week's show. Instead of highlighting aspects of life in Southwest Florida, we're devoting the half hour to Politics Unfiltered, looking at local, state, and federal races, hearing from candidates unedited. The highest profile race is U.S. Congress 19. When newcomer Trey Radel vacated the seat, his term was filled by first-timer Kurt Clausen, who opted not to seek re-election. The seat, lately a revolving door, is up for grabs again, with a handful of hopefuls. Ahead of the August 30th primary, we invited all the Republican candidates to our studio for a political forum held in front of a live audience. Former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino made a late decision not to participate. Sanibel Councilman Chauncey Goss and Naples businessman Francis Rooney spent more than an hour fielding questions. Here are the highlights.
And we've had 5 congressmen in the last 12 years, and I think we need to stop with the turnover. We need to send someone up there who's going to be consistent, and someone who's going to really listen, and someone who knows this area and is going to represent us well.
When Kurt decided to retire, my wife turned to me and said, "You've been going around the country speaking about foreign policy and how you think that the country's going downhill and worried about the opportunities for our children, and so why don't you just run and see what you can do about it?"
And I live in a coastal community, and we do get federal money for beaches, but I like a small federal government, and I like a federal government that doesn't take money to play the middleman, and that's what they do right now. Is they take, so for the dollar they're spending on my beach renourishment, they're probably collecting $1.75. So it's not a very good return on investment. Florida is a really big state. We're an enormous economy. We're one of the biggest economies in the world. Not just the United States, but in the world. We can manage our own projects. And when I used to be the executive director of something called the Gasparilla Island Conservation and Improvement Association, which is up in Boca Grande in northern Lee County, and we had a federal project there, and we always found that we could do the project much more cheaply. Or much cheaper if the federal government wasn't involved at all. The state could do it and the county could do it, but when you got the Corps involved, you had something like the Davis-Bacon Act, which all of a sudden you had to pay higher wages because of the labor unions, and it just drove the costs up. So I think that the state is perfectly capable of taking care of its beaches. But having said that, I want to make sure that $1.75 doesn't go to D.C. first.
I tell you, Chauncey hit the nail on the head. We are a donor state because we have such a famously ununited congressional delegation, and we pay a lot more taxes than we're getting back. And beach renourishment is one example of something that maybe should be done more locally, but we ought to get our share of the money back to do the things that we need to do here with our taxes. And somehow or another, and that's one thing I think that I could work on as a business guy, is try to work with the other members of this delegation to turn them into more of a united fighting machine for our resources here in Florida. There are other states that are much more cohesive and as a result get a lot more out of the government than Florida, and I think that's a big problem. You got the Corps of Engineers dredging. It took an arm and a leg. It took Mario and Kurt Clausen years to get $2 paltry million to dredge Doctors Pass and Gordon Pass. You'd have thought you were dredging New York Harbor. I mean, we've got to do better at that.
I used to work on a lot of these problems, the federal fiscal problems, spending. Social Security is always the easiest one to fix because it's really a math problem. And it's not that hard if you're good at math. Even if you're not that good at math, it's not that hard to fix. You've got to take a look at how many people you've got working in the workforce and then how many people are retiring, and you've got to make it work. People are living a lot longer than they used to be, Chad. So that's the reason that people are talking about raising the retirement age. And yeah, I'd absolutely support raising the retirement age. It's being raised right now incrementally, and I support that, but I don't support it for anyone who's at or near retirement, for anyone 55 or over. So if you're 55 or over, I wouldn't touch Social Security, but if you're under 55, I would, and the reason is because I'm under 55, I'm 50, and I know it's not going to be there for me in the way I want it, and my son's sitting back there, he's about to be 21, it's certainly not going to be available for him if we don't change it. So we need to start dealing with that. And I would talk to the actuaries and figure out what that age should be, but people are working, longer, than 62. So if it's 70 over time, you raise it, 6 months every year, which I think is the way it's stepped right now. We could do that. And I think, again, talking to the actuaries, they can figure out, what a good life expectancy is and make the math problem work, because that's really all it is.
Because of extension of life expectancy, it's gone from being an actuarially sound program when it was set up originally. People didn't live that long. There's a very close relationship between the time people could get benefits and the time people on average died. And now it's very unsecure. And I've talked to a lot of young people, and it really bothers me that they don't believe Social Security will be there for them. So I think it's incumbent upon us to redefine the future of Social Security for the young people so that they believe that the government is responsible. And I don't know how your young people are talking to you, but it's not a good thing when people don't have confidence that the government's promises are not going to be kept. So at some level, maybe the next generation of people entering the workforce have a different benefit matrix. Maybe they have more options than the historic Social Security program. I think there's a lot of ways that you could do some of the very things Chauncey mentioned here to put in place a mechanism that will solve the math problem over time.
The face-off between state representatives Matt Hudson and Kathleen Pasadomo is shaping up to be the most expensive Senate primary in the state of Florida this year. Both are current office holders, vying for the Senate seat held by Garrett Richter before he hit the term limit. Their challenge is to separate themselves despite being on the same side of the aisle. Here's an excerpt from their forum.
Can you point to one vote of yours that clearly shows you are not a liberal, and one vote of your opponent's that would suggest he or she is? And Matt, can you start this round off?
One particular vote of mine that would demonstrate my belief as a conservative would have been the bill that I passed, House Bill 1143 in 2010. That bill was a deregulation bill to remove excess regulations away from healthcare practitioners, and also was a bill that would have provided for ultrasounds to be performed prior to a termination of pregnancy. That bill was vetoed by Governor Christ. I think the following year there was some pro-life legislation that, in fact, my opponent did not vote for. So I'd say that would be a difference.
My whole philosophy is one of conservative values. I'm extremely fiscally conservative. Every single bill that I have voted for, I have looked at ways to cut taxes, cut regulations on business, balance the state budget, put funds in reserves. So honestly, every single bill I voted on has been a conservative measure. And you can look at the history of the legislation that has passed, and it's usually passed on party lines. And I have been right there with my Republican colleagues. I want to say one thing about those bills that my opponent has been haranguing and harassing me about on media. I voted for 24-hour waiting period. I voted for every single one of those abortion bills. We had 9 bills, 9 abortion bills. I voted for 7, and I voted against 2. And the one I voted against, and I want you all to know that, was a bill that required a doctor to lie to a patient. I'm a lawyer. I am not going to tell a doctor to lie to a patient. That provision in one of those abortion bills was so bad the Senate didn't even hear the bill. The bill died in the House, and it was only heard in the House because it was a political ploy for somebody who was running for election and needed a win.
This is also an election year for State Rep Heather Fitzenhagen, but without a District 78 opponent, she was already named the winner. Being unchallenged gives her the opportunity to focus on leading instead of campaigning.
On the forefront, we've been dealing here locally with our water issues as they have over in the St. Lucie, Martin County area, and that will be a primary focus, I think, this upcoming session. I think also concerns about how we're going to handle the Zika virus is another. Gaming in Florida is consistently an issue for us about how we're going to respond to different segments of the state wanting to be able to have gaming and others not. I think that the other big issue for me, and will continue to be, medical services, how we deliver them in Florida and how we increase the transparency and the quality of delivering those services.
Now, with some of these issues that you just enumerated, do you see it changing course based on new people coming in? Because these are already things that had been talked about previously.
Well, certainly there will be some shift. It depends on how the House and Senate are aligned, what will be the balance of power between the Republicans and the Democrats. I believe that we will continue as Republicans to maintain control of the House of Representatives and the Senate. So that will enable us to continue to push forward our agenda, which highlights some of the things that I just mentioned.
Now, you mentioned water. It's been gaining momentum. There's been a lot of grassroots effort towards purchasing land and making a better cleansing opportunity down to the Everglades.
Yes.
Do you see something actually happening on that this year?
I think that we will see some significant movement. When you say something happening, I think the first thing we need to do is to continue to develop a plan that we can add to the existing ones that we have. We have the C-43 and C-44 reservoirs. We have a plan for the Central Everglades Project, or SERP, but what is not included currently is a flowway south of Lake Okeechobee and a filtration system so that the water can flow through to Florida Bay. So I think if we can address that so that that is included in the plans that we have, and then try to allot the appropriate funding, then we will have made a significant step.
Now, being a lawmaker from this area, which is so critical to what's going on with the Lake O discharges, do you see maybe sponsoring or co-sponsoring any bills to that effect?
I would welcome the opportunity to sponsor a bill of that nature. I think what we need to do prior to crafting a bill, though, is to really sit down, all the legislators and all the interest groups, and try to find what is a true comprehensive plan. Because not only do we have to address the discharges from Lake Okeechobee, but we still have to address the sheet flow and the nutrients that are loaded into that water that come from up in the Kissimmee Basin.
Sure, that causes blooms in the first place.
Right, so can we address the blooms at a local level with some type of technology or biotechnology? Can we look to find ways to make dairy farming a cleaner process so that that doesn't have effluent that flows into the basin of water that we serve? Or the other thing is, can we look at what we can do for septic tanks? These are all smaller components of the problem, but always very important ones. So we have to look at all those problems.
I guess when you look overall, our democracy is really dependent on the input from the people going out to vote.
Without question, it is. And so I would really like to, more than anything, encourage everybody to get out and vote this primary season, and then again in November, because we all have a stake in what's going on.
When we come back, a set of commentaries from both the Daily News and the News Press. Stay with us.
My name is Steve Unser, and cabinetry is my specialty. I have been creating custom designed cabinetry for 20 years in Southwest Florida. And now I am celebrating the grand opening of our new Naples showroom. Steve Unser Cabinetry will help you design your kitchen, bath, or home office with stunning results, offering the best quality of cabinets with a wide variety of design options and pricing to fit any budget. If your kitchen isn't becoming to you, you should be coming to us. Now 2 locations to serve you.
Taking it local, Republican candidates competing for 3 Collier County Commission seats also made their way to our studio. We broke out the races and let them face off. 9 candidates competing for seats in District 2, 3, and 5 took the stage in groups. When questioned, they all agree the impact fee structure needs attention. They were split on the Commission's responsibility toward affordable housing and how to square property rights with development. All the forums are available online at naplesnews.com. A long-standing practice with news organizations is to carefully vet candidates and make political endorsements. It's something both the Daily News and the news press do on your behalf. Today we have 2 commentaries, one representing each newspaper. We begin with Alan Bartlett and on to Tom Hayden.
We would breathe a sigh of relief that it's over, but it's not. Assuming we're not under siege by a hurricane, Tuesday is the primary election. The campaign is over for a few winning candidates in Southwest Florida on Tuesday, but in many cases it's not over at all because the general election is yet to come on November 8th. Our editorial board has interviewed nearly 25 candidates on the Collier County ballot, and we sat in on nearly 30 other candidate interviews in collaboration with the News Press editorial board. We're both now owned by the same company. The Daily News and the News Press have agreed on some endorsements, and we agreed in the congressional race, each recommending Francis Rooney for the Republican Party nomination. We've parted ways on a few. Our endorsements are based on what we believe the key issues are and where candidates stand. We also consider how the candidates will function with other current leaders on the board on which they want to serve. As we've rolled out our endorsements since August 3rd, I've caught grief from some that our choices prove we're left-leaning, and from others that we endorse candidates too far to the right. Nothing makes my day more than to get complaints from both sides. Which brings me to why I'm here today, to vent against both the Republicans and the Democrats. A handful of candidates with no intention of actually wanting to serve, have closed state legislative races and a South Lee County Commission race to only Republicans. Under Florida's closed primary system, that means a ghost write-in candidate who files for November 8th can disenfranchise about half of the voters who are from another political party who don't have a party affiliation. I don't expect the Republicans or the Democrats to fix this loophole because they can benefit. So instead, I am suggesting that anyone who has been disenfranchised strike back. Look these fake candidates up on election websites. Send them 17 cents or a check for $1.03. Create misery for them in filing campaign contribution and expense reports. If Republicans and Democrats won't fix this loophole, it's time to revolt. That's what I'm thinking. Join in the conversation at naplesnews.com.
A tradition, and we believe a responsibility at the News Press, is endorsing candidates in local, state, and federal races. It is an immense process by the editorial board, especially during a presidential year election. There were 33 candidates on the ballot for the August 30th primary who were interviewed by the editorial board, video shot of each, questionnaires compiled by all those running. All of this was used in helping us make what we believe were informed choices. The intention of the process is not to tell someone how to vote, but to provide perspective on who we believe will make the best community leaders and represent their constituents with the highest degrees of integrity, passion, and expertise. The Naples Daily News also has been rolling out its endorsements as well. We have agreed on many of the races, disagreed on some others. For example, they like challenger Dick Anderson over incumbent Larry Kiker for the District 3 County Commission seat. We like Kiker's body of work over the past 4 years. Naples selected incumbent Sharon Harrington for Supervisor of Election. We thought a series of Election Day and spending mistakes over the past 4 years were reasons the office needed a new leader. The 4 school board races have demanded high attention and scrutiny because of the historical significance of the board expanding from 5 to 7 members. We like Charlie Flores in District 2, Chris Patrica in District 3, Jane Kuckel, the new at-large District 6, and Guido Minaya and incumbent Kathleen Morgan to move on to the general election in at-large District 7. We chose incumbent Mike Scott to continue to lead the Lee County Sheriff's Office, incumbent Frank Mann for County Commission in District 5, incumbent Lisbeth Benaquisto to continue her good work in the State Senate, joining Kathleen Pasadomo, our choice to succeed Garrett Richter. We endorse Francis Rooney to fill the all-important congressional seat, being vacated by Kirk Clausen, who decided not to run for another term. All elections are important, and your vote does matter. We encourage all registered voters who have yet to cast a ballot to do so by mail, in early voting, or on Election Day.
Our team of reporters are all over these races and issues. Here's a look at what's happening on the beat.
Hi, I'm Greg Stanley with the Naples Daily News, and we're starting to hear the first talk coming out of Immokalee about incorporation that we've heard in a couple years now. A couple things are spurring it. Disappointment with the county. Immokalee has long felt and still feels ignored or overstepped by the county, especially when it comes to money and road projects. The other thing is Village of Estero just incorporated, and so right now the Immokalee business leaders are going to bring down the attorneys that helped Estero become a city and see what it would take to turn Immokalee into a city of its own.
Hi, I'm Alex Glorioso, the political reporter here at the Naples Daily News. On Wednesday, I went to Tampa to cover a rally held by presidential nominee Donald Trump for the Republican Party. Major focus of that rally was immigration. Trump is trying to appeal to both poor African American voters and Hispanic voters living in Florida and across the country. However, he's buckling down in Florida. He's canceled events recently in Oregon, Colorado, and Nevada, but they still think that they can win Florida for the Republican Party. So wait for the new campaign rhetoric regarding immigration and see what happens with the Hispanic voters.
Coming up, think you know the candidates for president? Maybe not. Thousands went online and filed to run. The best they can hope for is style points. That's ahead and behind the headlines. Hard to remember when candidates didn't have a Facebook profile or a Twitter handle. Now it's a key part of their campaign strategy. Looking at the race for president, we were curious as to who had the better social standing. Jefferson Graham reports for the USA Today Network.
It takes a lot of courage to run for president.
What happened in this city?
They're hoping to get your vote in November at the polls, but on social media, Donald Trump is already winning based on pure, raw numbers. Republican candidate Trump has 22.7 million likes and followers on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, compared to 15 million for former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Remember that these numbers are worldwide. They include many from outside the United States and only a fraction of the general public. But they do show that Trump is a master at Twitter, making news with raw, unfiltered thoughts that often produce headlines and occasionally get him into trouble. Clinton's posts seem produced by committee, and they're often focused on visuals, videos and photos from rallies and conventions and the like. Where Clinton currently bests Trump is on YouTube, the video network, where she has 16 million views to Trump's 8 million. Here she runs slickly produced campaign ads and clips, while Trump puts most of his efforts to talking straight to the camera about issues. He's posted just over 40 videos, while Clinton has over 180. But let's not forget that while some 37 million people are following the candidates on social media, some 135 million people are expected to vote in November. That is one huge social network. From Manhattan Beach, California, Jefferson Graham, USA Today.
Enough is enough, says the Federal Election Commission. The agency is not laughing about fake candidates filing to run for office. The FEC's online database shows almost 2,000 phony candidates with kooky names or ones depicting fictional characters. Take a look. On that note, we're going to close this edition of Behind the Headlines. Thank you for watching. You can see all our shows, past and present, by logging on to naplesnews.com. On the left-hand side, under Quick Links, select Behind the Headlines. We also roll out on Facebook. I'm Amy Osher. See you back here next week.